Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Derek Crager. He's the founder of Practical AI and creator of Pocket Mentor, a voice-based AI that teaches, troubleshoots, and trains teams through a simple phone call. I'm curious to learn more about the motivation to start Practical AI. And from what I've learned about Derek so far, like myself, he's also an advocate for effective communication. So I'm really keen to find out where that interest came from as well. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Derek.
Thank you, Neil. Appreciate you having me here.
Yeah. So before you started Practical AI, what type of work did you do?
Really ran the gamut. Back out of high school, I jumped into blue collar work, work with my hands, went through an apprenticeship, um, went into industrial installations, and then automotive manufacturing for about 15 years. Spent about 10 years building my own real estate company, largest of its kind in Indiana for its time. I got back into automotive manufacturing, had food manufacturing for about 3 years, and eventually spent half a decade at Amazon. And during this transition, I went from working with my hands to engineering to process engineer to learning teams where I'm teaching other people how to do their job and onboarding. And it was my time at Amazon, about half a decade there, when I took everything that I knew about learning and I put it in a bucket called segmented learning. And the result was I built the highest rated employee training program in Amazon history. So that's the background. It's kind of like back and forth or up and down, but where I'm here today is that I'm leveraging AI to replace the hundreds of people and the thousands of hours that it took to implement a similar program at Amazon. Today, I'm using AI to give that ability to anybody out here now.
Wonderful. With the moves that you made throughout your career, were those all planned or did they just kind of happen that way?
Well, my background is that I was, I don't know, I think my grandpa would say the odd duck. I was diagnosed autistic, ADHD, and dyslexic at age 50, and I'm now 58 as of last week. So, because of that, and I didn't know why I was different, it that caused some turmoil for sure in the peers that I work with, and it caused me to kind of dive into my own hobbies in that. And I got involved in technology back in the 80s, back pre-internet and that. So you asked me if the choice was mine or somebody else's, and I could say it is probably a little bit of both over the years.
Wow. Those when you were diagnosed, I'm sure you were able to look back on your life and notice these differences. But I'm really curious, how did those differences play out, and how did you notice them even back then? What did they look like?
Well, I just felt like an alien on this planet. I was observing people would speak, and I didn't quite understand what they meant. So when I would respond, they would look at me like I was hallucinating for some well or reason. So I spent my time from age 14 on in the virtual self help aisle, which I know a lot of us have done in the past, and just trying to learn, like, how do I connect with people, how do I enter a room, how do I talk about certain topics, how do I transition from different topics. I picked up psychological cues, how to look somebody in the eye when you give them a handshake, and when you're sitting at a table next to someone, if you sit to their left, they're more likely to agree with you and like you. It's just a psychological thing. So I used all these things in it. And after decade, when I found out that basically I'm writing my own subroutines for life, I just thought, well, this isn't what I hear as normal. or typical. So I just started doing a little research, and that research, I got into some groups with some other people, and I saw storylines that were similar to mine, and I just started communicating. And I did that for about 10 years, and then eventually went to a psychologist as a to get the evaluation.
I'm really curious now because I've never spoken to anyone like you before that have these conditions. So I'm curious as to how you interpreted the working world. What's something that you noticed about working in the working world that you didn't anticipate?
Um, there's um, there's always several things that I did better than everyone else, and in the different roles that I played in. But at the same time, there were things that I did worse than everybody else. So it's something referred to as a spiky profile. So my my personal features, the things that I could do, would go up and down if we mapped it out on a control chart, and it wasn't in the middle. And so I would stand out when I did something well, and then I would stand out when I did something horrible. And if I was working with somebody that appreciated what I did well and could overlook what I did horrible, we had a great relationship and we excelled as a team. But if it was the opposite, despite everything I was doing well, if they just if that what I did bad was a stuck point, then there's no I was off the team at that point. So that was the up and down, just like a big roller coaster ride in my life.
Wow. What's an example of the things you did well and things you didn't do so well?
I see pattern recognition, so I can make production lines run much faster than normal. I go down rabbit holes and fine tune. Those are the things I do well: pattern recognition and pattern deployment. At Amazon, I was able to identify patterns of how people learn, and I was able to put knowledge at the fingertips of those that needed it when they needed it, and that made them excel. So that made me feel good.
Oh, okay. And then one of the things that you didn't do so well?
What I didn't do so well is just swallow swallow decisions from others that I didn't align with. Um, do this because I said so type of thing, which sounds like I'm 8 years old. I'm talking to my one of my parents, but in the corporate world, it's similar. People at the high level, anybody above us, they make decisions and they don't always explain it. And sometimes those decisions, let's face it, are stupid and they cost money. But the first people to be expelled because of bad decisions up here are the ones down here doing the implementation. Well, that person or team must have failed. So let's get rid of them and let's just try it again. And then those people fail. So it's not until there's more pattern recognition that the decision maker might be the root of the problem.
Yeah, you're definitely good at noticing patterns, all right. Yeah, that happens all the time. And I think you're right. It's, the people up, people up there in the C-suite, they make decisions and they rely on the people beneath them to implement them. But if they were poor decisions, then you're probably going to have poor outcomes. And who's going to get the finger pointed at them? The people who made the decisions, the people that implemented them. I think you're right about that. It's going to be like, you didn't implement it well. It's like, dude, I did what you told me to do. What do you want from me? I'm not magic. I'm not Harry Houdini out here.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so then you eventually decide to found Practical AI. So what was the motivation to do that?
Motivation was that I don't like propaganda. When I say I don't like it, I just avoid propaganda because it just wastes our time. And AI we're just really about 2 years into AI from a consumer standpoint. So to me, it feels like it's 1992 and the internet has just come around. It actually took about 17 years from when the internet was introduced till everybody jumped on in 2006 because they had web browsers on their mobile phones. So here with AI, the reason I jumped in is that I see this looking back. The AI wave is similar or matching to the internet wave. It's an exchange of information. And so we're really only 2 years into it. So those that are getting into it today are, we call ourselves early adopters. So the practical part of practical AI is that let's put what is out there and available to good use. And if I look back at the internet and pre-internet days, there were people that avoided implementing in the internet at their company, and then there were those that were implementing it. They were just spending money and they didn't know why. So the practical part of practical AI says, you know what? Here's a good tool, and I'm not going to twist your arm to make you use it. But if we're going to build something, we're going to build something that's useful. It's going to make the user's day better, their work day better, their home life better. And if it does not do those things, then we're not going to build it. And that's where the practical comes in. We try to stay away from those buzzwords and headlines that say one thing or the other about AI. And when it comes down to it, AI is just one more tool that we can leverage. And as long as we apply it in a sound manner, then we can have that work for us.
When it comes to you developing Pocket Mentor, what is Pocket Mentor, and who's it meant to, or who's meant to use it?
Oh, excellent. So yeah, Pocket Mentor is it's a knowledge gap filler, and the simplicity honestly makes it a little bit difficult to speak of its benefits sometime. But if we look at the singularity points of simplicity, and Google.com has a box, it's a blank page with a box, and it's searches. That's the entire Google simplicity. If we look at Amazon.com, Amazon.com in 1995, when they debuted, and for a while after, they were just another online retailer. There was nothing unique about Amazon.com. It wasn't until Jeff Bezos talked to his developing team and said, "Hey, I want one-click purchase." And his developer said, "You know, ha ha ha, no, why'd you call us here? One-click purchase." And they said, "Well, we can't do that. It's 11 clicks, and that's what it has to be." Anyway, the back and forth between the developers and Jeff Bezos went until it came down to one click. And that was a singularity point in online retail. And that is what catapulted Amazon up to the number one retailer in the world, is because of the simplicity of design. So where Pocket Mentor comes in here, we're not Amazon's growth. That was the side effect people wanted and desired. So the voice AI is what Pocket Mentor is. And when I say voice AI, it's just really a conversation like you and I are having now, Neil. If you could imagine that I'm not a real person, I'm just an AI that was programmed with all the knowledge of Derek Crager, and the level of conversation that you're having with this AI, it approaches that of the human interaction. And that's what we replicate with Pocket Mentor via a telephone call. So the simplicity that we're implementing here is that it's like talking to a genie, rubbing a magic lamp and talking to a genie and asking for something. It's there. It's like connecting every individual on earth with the Akashic records. They have instant access through a verbal communication. And if we look about alternatives, like, well, Derek, couldn't I just type and search? Well, you could type and search, but it takes longer, about 10 times longer than just talking. So that iterative exchange does not grow as fast. And if we go backtrack on if I just chat or if I type or if I'm searching, and we keep going backwards to information that's slower and slower and slower, then we finally get back to the U.S. Postal Service and even horseback days when they're carrying letters across the country on horseback. It took longer. And when things took longer, change and growth were slower. So now we come back into 2025. Pocket Mentor is a way for you and your listeners, anybody, to call and access a specific knowledge base about what they want to do. And if we have a K through 12 version, and in that version, the teacher teaches the students in the classroom the one time through, but there's always, little Johnny that has questions about this and questions about that. And it takes up all the class time, the teaching time, if the teacher is engaged one-on-one with little Johnny or Jamie Lynn. So what Pocket Mentor does, it allows after the initial teaching for any of the learners to just call up their teacher, but it's a virtual teacher, and ask these questions and take them down the rabbit hole to the extent of everything that that learner wants to learn. So it's scalable, it's accessible 24 hours a day, and it takes that repetition off the shoulders of the teacher, and it allows the individual to design their own one size fits one learning regimen.
Wow, that sounds really useful. What kind of pushback have you gotten from people adopting Pocket Mentor?
Well, it's the similar pushback for every new technology that comes out. There's always a trust factor. There's the I'll never use it or I will use it, but people find that it's so easy because just to clarify, Neil, it's not an app. It doesn't use software. It is not software. It does not need internet access. Matter of fact, I could go to my mom's or grandma's house and grab one of those phones that are on the wall, still connected with a cord, the analog phone, and I could dial Pocket Mentor for math class, or Pocket Mentor for leadership training, or Pocket Mentor on how to change the oil in my car. And I could ask questions and get anthropomorphized conversation from an AI that sounds like a human, that has patience that my dad never had when he was teaching me things. And it also checks in to see how I'm doing when I'm running through that. So our AI is so simplified that you do not need technology to access it. We take care of all that on the back end.
Wow. My father didn't have patience either. It's a wonder I learned my multiplication tables. This is wonderful. So, I mentioned in the intro, Derek, that like myself, you're also an advocate of effective communication. And I started this podcast and YouTube channel based on my own struggles giving presentations in front of management when I worked as an engineer. But I got a lot better at it over time because I saw the benefit of doing so. So I'm curious, when it comes to you communicating with others, what did you do to get better at it?
I I went in whether I was scared or not, and I think the phrase is, everybody has butterflies. You just need to get them flying in alignment. But how I got better at it, I just kept doing it and doing it. I know back in the 1990s, I joined a group called Toastmasters. And then when I dive into something, I dive in pretty deep myself, and I isolate and I just focus on that. So I took part in Toastmasters, and then I found and I started following a 2003 Toastmaster champion of the world, who I went to his learning and his workshops, and he gave me advice, and I learned from his books and his videos. As it moved forward, I found a Train the Trainer program that was presented by a gentleman in his company with the same name, Floyd Wickman, floydwickman.com. And I learned things that I didn't know, and I got up and they taught in an intensive 3-day workshop. And then they hired me to work for them. So that allowed me to practice even more. I eventually found out that I wasn't good enough to be on stage for that company. But with my technology background, I was able to, through communication, I started ghostwriting for the principal of the company. So I ghost wrote in 3 major industry magazines. I ghost wrote a book, and I added my own technical flair. So I actually got my name on the cover, and I think that was published in 2008, and it's still on Amazon. I don't know how useful it is, but as I continued, I and joined the learning side in the different companies I was at. If I'm on a learning team, that means that one of my responsibilities is to stand at the front of a classroom and teach others. So at that point, it's still repetition, but I learned to embrace the audience as friends, as family. I tried to stay away from that whole picture them in their underwear type of thing that that they phrased in the 1950s. But some tips and tricks when I'm speaking in front of a room is that it's best to just have good conversations. Hey, what'd you do this morning? Hey, how are you doing? And this is before the classroom even starts or the presentation even starts. So if it's a business scenario and you're presenting a project or a project status, it's good to know all the people and to have some. You don't have to have a full relationship with your audience, but if you just take the time, and I found out if I took the time just to ask them how their day went, did they have coffee that morning? Hey, while you're here this week, because when I was with Amazon, I traveled for about 3 years all over the world, and I was in rooms with different people, and we would have a 5 or a 10 day workshop, and I would just get to know them, ask them how their weekend went, how their travel went, and talking about the weather is a real thing. Well, what's it like back home for you? It's rainy here in London, and it helped me learn a little bit about them, and it helped take the pressure off my shoulders. And the things that I learned before class, I was able to, when I opened up the classroom or I opened up the presentation in the office setting, I was able to start off with an introduction. And then I could say, you know what I mean, Jim, you had trouble, you didn't get your coffee this morning, I heard. So it's use those personal connections with the audience. And again, those personal connections can be made the morning of. So I think overall, that's the best thing that I've ever learned from others is that engagement before. That way, it takes the pressure off the actual presentation.
Yeah, the weather question is an interesting one. I live in San Diego, so I'm not sure how far that would really go. Everyone asked me, how's the weather? It's sunny. What else you want to know?
Funny.
Yeah, it's kind of that's how I'm living. Okay, so when it comes to the presentations that you do, Derek, do you ever get nervous before them? And if so, how do you manage your nerves?
I do get nervous, and to be honest, the longer I have to think about something, if I overthink it, I just spiral. So I do best when I have a game plan, and most of the time I'm in front of a room. I have some sort of slide deck that I'm working. I don't what is it, death by slide point or death by PowerPoint, whatever that phrasing is. I stay away from that. I take cues on how to present via a slide deck, but I make sure that I have a sequence. And if I know that there's a sequence and I don't have to memorize the entire hour or the entire 10 minutes or the entire 8 hours if I know there's a game plan. So it could be a PowerPoint or it could be, index cards or something that I'm just keeping up at the podium or I have in my pocket or I'm carrying around with me. And I could just go, oh, yeah. Oh, and don't forget about. And so I will reference the slide or the card and talk about it and engage the audience. And then once I'm done, I don't have to memorize what I'm saying because hopefully it's material that I know. And then once I go to the next slide or the next topic, I just see the high points, the major words, and that triggers a memory for me to deliver whatever the meaning is behind that slide.
That's a smart plan. And I'm also not a fan of memorizing presentations because the day of when you're giving it, if you forget something, it can kind of throw you into a tizzy. And then you have to remember, well, what was I supposed to say next? And then you kind of go into this free fall and get all these people staring at you, waiting to see what you're going to say next. And you don't remember what you're going to say next. And then you start sweating a whole lot. And then, everything just goes downhill from there. I really like your plan of even having those index cards to remind you or just using the slides as a reminder as to what comes next. That's smart on your part. So For the people who are listening or watching our conversation, Derek, and they see the benefit of getting better at giving presentations or just effectively communicating with others, what's the first thing that they should work on?
In the pursuit of getting better, you're asking, Neil?
Yep.
In the pursuit of getting better, it's to read your audience. If I've never actually done it myself, well, one time, but you can go to an improv class and learn how to improvise, and but you can practice that on your own. Look at the audience and look at them as people. And there's the as you're scanning the audience, and it could be virtual, right? We could be doing this through Zoom, for example, but whether it's in Zoom or whether it's in a live audience or a live office, look at each individual as a human and maintain eye contact with each person for like 2 seconds, just long enough. You don't want to stay too long, and you don't want to do the typewriter scan, zip, or the Cylon, laser. You actually want to connect with each individual. So if you have an audience of 5, 10, or 100, pick a number. Find a few people in that audience and engage with them. And when I say engage, you could ask questions, and it's always good to engage with questions, or you can engage by saying, with a show of hands. And if you can get your audience moving, if you can see their pulse and their temperature, then you will know whether you're doing well or whether you need to warm them up a little bit more before you go on to the learning part. And if you can get them moving around and engage themselves, now they're ready to learn, or now they're ready to hear what your presentation is.
Wonderful. This has been a great conversation, Derek. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
You can find me by name on LinkedIn. I welcome all requests and questions and comments and advice. Our company, Practical AI, is just like it sounds phonetically, practicalai.app, practicalai.app, and that's app as an apple, Paul.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Neil.